Hello everyone and welcome to Spice Cuisine. My name is Harper, if did not know, and today I am going to show you how to make my version of a vegetable hash egg skillet thingamabob. It's more or less really good, but instead of just like, my regular kind of voiceover recipe videos, I'm going to do more of like a live recipe where more or less I just talk while I make it, but I will have the measurements for everything and then also like animations throughout the video telling you exactly what to do. So even with my rambling, you will hopefully still have a really good sense of what to do if you want to make this recipe. So more or less, with that being said, let us begin. Okay, so we're gonna first start by cleaning the Yukon potatoes. So for me, I usually actually skin the potatoes, but because these are so nice and fresh, I'm not going to. But more or less, we have our vegetable brush thing. I think everybody has like a designated kind of like scraper or brush or whatever you call them to wash your potatoes. So they're all washed off, and let's continue on from there. So here are all the ingredients that I am using for this vegetable hash today. Now, I will put all the measurements in the description down below, but more or less, the big thing you need to know is, number one, this dish is super easy to like, kind of interchange. So if you don't like mushrooms, you can like put them out and bring something else in, or you don't like avocado, you don't have avocado, you can kind of, mix and match. It's not very to the books. You have to have this ingredient to make this dish good. You only really need for this dish to be really good is potatoes and onions, garlic, and spices, and that will be a really good hash. And then the actual like vegetable part is really up to you. I've sometimes even used like frozen vegetables. They work out really well, but I want it to be, you could say, more like fresh vegetables, and also cheap vegetables. All these vegetables you usually have in your fridge, except maybe avocado, but after that it's super easy. I do have eggs with this, I just don't have them out yet, but more or less, let's continue on with cutting up these potatoes. I'm going to start off by just a simple, I want to say, cut in the middle, then on their sides, cut in the middle again, and then 2 cuts on either side. 1, 2, and then just small little, what's there, like, dices? Is that the right word? More or less chunks, like so. So you get something kind of like this. We have our potatoes done, so I'm gonna start actually cooking them right now because potatoes take a while, and then we'll come back to actually cut up the rest of the vegetables. Okay, so I am heating up the skillet on medium to high heat. I'm just going to toss in some water to see if it's ready to go. It is in fact ready to go. So with that being said, I'm just gonna let the water evaporate real quick because I don't want to have like an oil water issue. But for that being said, we're just going to put a little bit of olive oil into the pan. I want enough to cover the pan, a thin layer more or less. And then I'm going to toss the potatoes in without burning myself. Just going to kind of mix these around, kind of even them out so they all are hopefully having an even amount of cooking space. And I'm just going to let them cook. This will probably take around 10 to 15 minutes. You're more or less watching the potatoes so they are not only like brown and golden, but the more important part is that potatoes themselves are cooked through enough that you can use a spatula to cut them up. So just my luck, my camera just died, and sadly I cannot find the other battery, so we're using my phone camera, but hopefully it'll be okay because it's an iPhone 10, so Apple has bragged that it has the same capability when it comes to camera strength as a DSLR, or like kind of, at least close. So we're gonna hope that they're not lying to us and everything looks good. But more or less, I'm just gonna start cutting up the the onions. I have personally just put the potatoes on low heat, if not just like, I think it's like no heat right now actually. And then I put a cover over it. And I did that mostly because personally, I don't want anything to burn while I'm, doing this. And it also allows the potatoes to hopefully steam by themselves and cook. So more or less, we have our, you know, half a yellow onion right here. And we're gonna try to cut this up into dices again. They're all kind of just like cubes at this point. I've always heard like, you know, people always saying, you know, oh, be careful while you cut and all that. And honestly, I'm stupid. I never took it very seriously. I feel like not a lot of people do sometimes. But then like I completely sliced my finger open and it really hurt. So now I take that warning very seriously. More or less, with that being said, we have the onions all diced up. And we're going to go on and cut up the bell pepper. We're gonna do the same thing like the onions and potatoes actually. So cut. We have the bell peppers like so. And then finally the mushrooms. So I'm gonna first actually wash these. Personally, I'm just going to cut these just like lengthwise. You can dice them if you want. I just feel like it's kind of like a kind of just a lot of trouble that I don't want to go through. I personally see that you dice up mushrooms when you want them very, very small. And personally, I don't really need these mushrooms very small. So why should I go through all the trouble if I don't need them? We're just gonna try to move stuff around. Mince the garlic. So but okay, from there, just gonna cut off all the nasty little head parts. Oh, that just dropped. And then something that I probably shouldn't have dropped in there. We're going to just... And so these don't have to be minced, very finely minced, I think the word is. But they do have to be minced a little bit. And this just gives a nice, you know, aroma and taste and just seasoning in general because, you know, all these foods, you know, garlic and potatoes and everything, doesn't have a lot of, you know, natural seasoning. So you have to kind of bring your own seasoning in. So let's go back over to the stove and see how potatoes are doing. Okay, so as you can see, after I think around like, I'd say 10 or so, maybe not 10 minutes, but 5 to 10 minutes, potatoes are pretty nicely cooked. You know, they're not even perfectly cooked because they have been just kind of on a very low heat, but you can see it was very easy to just cut them in half. So I'm actually gonna cut all of these in half, and that just gives, you know, more surface for you than like fry them up and allows them to cook faster. I personally just do this because I feel like this allows just like it's easier, more convenient, and you can also just gauge how well the potatoes are cooked. The only issue really is it's a little time consuming, so keep that in mind. But honestly, like, babysitting food isn't that hard, so if you have to babysit food a little bit, why not? I personally always see cooking as kind of like, not like therapeutic, but almost therapeutic, where you just kind of like, you're able to just focus on cooking and just working on your craft and making good food and whatnot. So for me, having to sit here and just do this for like less than 5 minutes is not a big deal. But if you're like, you know, on a time crunch or whatnot, this might not be good. I also feel like, and I think I said this before, but I also feel like when I do have to like, you know, dice these all via spatula, it gives me a good milestone to say, okay, when the potatoes are cooked enough that I can use a spatula to cut them in half, I can start, you know, putting in other vegetables. So I feel like sometimes, you know, you accidentally put in the vegetables a little too early, so then the potatoes are not all the way cooked, which feels horrible, or they're too cooked and you start burning stuff if you put them in too late. So this is a good, like, you know, milestone to know exactly when you need to start adding in other vegetables. But more or less from there, we have the potatoes like so. They are diced up nicely. So I'm just putting on the heat to around medium to high heat. I personally think there's enough oil. I put around, like, I could say a tablespoon or so of oil, so I feel like this is enough. So I'm going to start off by cooking the onions. Onions cook the slowest when it comes to vegetables after potatoes. So I put them in first, let them cook until they are translucent and a little bit browned. Okay, so I'm going to actually season the mixture like so. We are probably almost ready to add in the next vegetable. I'm going to use a little bit of seasoning salt because I like this stuff a little bit too much. So you can see that potatoes are getting nice and cooked. The onions are translucent and a little brown. The pan itself is also a little bit gummy, which means it's time for just a little bit more oil so things don't begin to stick horribly. So that being said, I'm going to next add in the bell peppers. And for these, you just want them a little bit translucent. If you touch them, they're a little bit soft. Because you have to also think about the mushrooms too. But that being said, I'm also going to start up the oven. So I'm just having the oven to 375 Fahrenheit. So that was super easy and simple. I'm also going to toss in the garlic. And then also just a little bit more oil, just a tiny bit. Because I was feeling the pan was a little gummy too. And you want to put the garlic at one of the last stages because you don't want the garlic to burn. Garlic is great, it gives great aromatics, it seasons the dish really well, but it also has a very low temperature point of burning. So you don't want to keep them in the pan too long or else it will burn and then you'll be sad. So at this point I have the pan on pretty high heat right now just because I am a little nervous about potatoes not being cooked all the way. But I'm also moving around the pan a lot because it's on such a high heat. I don't want anything to start to burn. I would personally say probably have your potatoes on, cook them a little bit more than I did. Okay, they're pretty well done, and I almost forgot the mushrooms. So hopefully this process will bring it home. Okay, we are back with the camera. So it was in the oven for around 5 minutes or so on broiler and then on bake again because I got impatient. But then I realized that the issue I was really having was the fact that the mushrooms were really soggy. This whole process of like my camera messing up and then everything else has really like changed how I usually cook these hashes. But like that's kind of fun, right? Like the fun is about cooking is it's not always the same every single time. So more or less, I'm putting this on, medium to high heat again, and just kind of like cooking off all the moisture, or like not all moisture, but enough that it's not kind of a soggy, kind of soupy pit of whatever. But I feel like we are at a really good place. Nothing looks like it's soupy anymore. I think I've cooked off all of the condensation. So with that being said, I'm just going to even out the hash. It looks very nice. It looks very brown and yellow and whatnot, but I promise you, when you put all the garnishes, it looks cuter. So more or less, we have our 2 eggs. So I'm going to just, I hope that doesn't break the yolk. Hey, no yolk breaking. And then another one. Hey, okay, with that being said, I'm going to put this in the oven itself on 375 for around 5 minutes and then just go from there because I don't want to accidentally make these eggs a little bit too overcooked. Also, while we wait, I just have my kind of green garnishes that I want to put on. So we have our parsley, our green onions, and then finally our avocado. Again, you can of course, mix and match. You don't have to have these if you don't want to. It's just, these are the ones that I like. But it's all up to you guys because at this point, this recipe is so off the rails that you can do anything with this recipe at this point. But it's gonna taste good no matter what. It might be a hot mess, but it will be good. That literally should be my tagline for this whole channel. It might be a hot mess, but it's still good. And here we go. Here is the vegetable hash. It's not done yet, but the eggs took around, I'm gonna say like less than 10 minutes. They took a little longer than I thought they were. Honestly, this is not a dish that, is a quick, easy thing. It is kind of like a long, easy thing. You could probably make it quicker, but I like leisurely cooking, so that's why it's taking forever. But more or less from there, I have all my garnishes, so let us begin garnishing. So I'm just gonna do a little bit of green onions, and then some parsley. And then finally, last but certainly not least, except if you can't get avocados or don't want avocados, avocados. There is my version of a vegetable hash. It looks pretty great. I'm actually going to get a picture of it and then we're gonna actually cut into it. So give me 1 second. First things first, perfectly done eggs. The consistency of the actual egg whites is like this kind of gooey, kind of custardy texture, which I really, really like when it comes to hash. but let's see, everything is nicely cooked. See that? Potatoes perfectly done. All of my freak out about potatoes. In the end, everything's okay. Perfectly seasoned. I'm like, for me the avocado just gives it a nice like you could say butteriness to kind of cut through all of the vegetables and whatnot. Honestly, this is like near perfect when it comes to just like a really fun, simple brunch breakfast situation. It does take some time, so if you want to like pre-cook like the potatoes so then it's like, easy like kind of fry up in the morning time, you definitely can do that. But to me, it's really, really good. It's really fun to make, and you know, it takes like probably like less than half an hour, so it's pretty great. And it's healthier than just like an egg and toast, so it's pretty good. But yeah, I think I'm gonna just eat this up, enjoy this fully, and I hope you like this video. So if you do, of course, click that like. If you want to see more from moi, just subscribe. I hope you guys have an amazing day. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.